on our watch. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about what's happening on our watch. I respect Jim Acosta and so many other people who are building communities as independent journalists. And I was watching one of his episodes and, he said, not on our watch. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment, and that's why I'm here talking to you. But the reality of the matter is that it is happening under our watch. And the fact of the matter is Donald Trump is systematically destroying American power and economy from within as MAGA Congress stands by him. While Congress can stop the president from these overreaching actions, MAGA Congress is not doing a thing about it. It is happening on our watch, and we are powerless to stop it. We as individuals can do very little. But together, we can move mountains. That's why we must connect and engage. That's why we must lift each other up. I always make it a point to repost people who are saying engaging and important things who are on my follower list. I'm always looking for wisdom and words of wisdom from the people that I follow or the people who interact with me to be able to lift their voices up as much as possible so that we can, hold each other closer as these dark days are here. We need to be able to hold candles for each other, inform each other, inspire empathy in each other. So in that spirit, I want to go through some news and some pending issues. So as the news came out that White House had paused tariffs on all countries except for China, the markets rebounded. And we can see to what extent this president can manipulate the stock markets just by talking about tariffs and moving on tariffs. And the fact that these tariffs are happening are independent somewhat of how the markets are reacting, but the markets are also sort of a survey of how the economy is doing. And the more volatile and unstable the markets are, the more it shows that the economy is volatile and unstable. So Donald Trump is playing fast and loose with the economy. And the markets closed really high today, with Dow closing 7.8% up, S&P 9.5% up, and NASDAQ 12.1% up. So, and there's no telling what's going to happen tomorrow. There's no predictability to the markets. We don't know whether the force of these Chinese tariffs will drive our markets down again or not. We don't know if after 90 days what happens with the tariffs. There's this apprehension, there's this impending doom that hangs over our head. And speaking of impending doom, if you look at the Department of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy is going around spreading disinformation about vaccines, and he spread disinformation about vitamin A being a cure for measles. And you know what that caused? That caused a poisoning, and there were poisonings reported of vitamin A poisoning because, and it happened countrywide, because the HHS secretary decided that he wanted to doubt vaccines. He was finally He conceded that the measles vaccines is the only way to combat the measles virus, but 2 children in Texas have already died by the time he did that. And don't forget that the Department of Health and Human Services is cutting grants from states for infectious diseases. That includes everything from measles to tuberculosis to rubella to mumps to HIV. And on the flip side of that, there's talk that Donald may issue an executive order to tariff pharmaceuticals as well, hiking the price of your medicine while Congress seriously contemplates cutting Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. So don't underestimate how close we are as a country to becoming sicker, unhealthier, and losing people we love because of how big of a mess the healthcare industry is and is becoming because of Bobby Jr.'s actions. Next topic is bring Andre home. Bring that gay makeup artist home. He's still there in San Salvador in that prison without due process of law. And there are hundreds with him, 75% of whom confirmed by 60 Minutes don't have a criminal record. And in that regard, Supreme Court was inhumane in its ruling. It left those who are already in El Salvador to suffer in cruel and unusual conditions. There's a good chance that Andre's case and others who are now in El Salvador reaches the DC District Court again. Because as I talked about jurisdiction in the previous video, well, they are not located in any jurisdiction. But the United States has constructive jurisdiction over them because they're being held there under the instruction and payment of the United States government. So it would have the only place that there would be jurisdiction would be back into the District Court of Columbia, because that's who deals with cases like this that involve foreign countries. So we have this constructive jurisdiction over them because they contracted to El Salvador to pay them and to keep America sent to them. No questions asked by El Salvador, by the way. So if you can do a photo op over there talking about how this prison is a tool for the government for illegal immigrants, you can bring back the people who you denied due process of law, or send a judicial team to El Salvador to process these people and bring back the people who were lawfully here. Whatever needs to happen soon. Because every day that the judiciary delays and doesn't compel the government to bring these people back, bring Andre back, there is trauma that cannot be undone being incurred on these innocent people. So, also something related to immigrants is that there's this whole propaganda on the right that immigrants don't pay taxes. But according to NPR, the acting head of the IRS resigned after the Treasury Department and Homeland Security reached an agreement to share tax data from some immigrants living in the country without legal status. So if they're not paying taxes, how are they getting tax records? When people talk, that's a talking point for a lot of these people who are hardcore MAGA. Well, illegal aliens don't pay taxes. Yeah, they do. So much so that somebody from the IRS was essentially resigned because the Treasury and Homeland Security were now looking at tax data of people who live in the United States. So not only does that prove that people with legal status without legal status in the U.S. pay taxes, but it also proves that they are under the jurisdiction of the United States because they pay taxes, despite the fact that they don't get benefit from those taxes. And that goes towards the birthright citizenship question, where the argument is that these parents are not under the jurisdiction of the United States, and therefore these children don't have birthright citizenship. No, this is why they have jurisdiction over these people, because they pay taxes. So much so that our government is now looking at that tax data. So this type of abuse of the government is happening. All the while, the propaganda wing talks about the waste, fraud, and abuse that Doji is bringing out. So my question remains, where are the receipts? Your website is a hot mess. Where are the investigations? DOJ hasn't opened any. The FBI isn't investigating them. Where are the arrests? These investigations are happening against people who Donald Trump perceives to be his enemies, but not against the alleged waste, fraud, and abuse that is happening apparently in our government. So where are the arrests? I believe the real waste is the $8 million a day that Elon Musk's companies get from the US government. I think the real waste is the money being spent on Doji. I think the real waste is gutting our government and a system that was built painstakingly for generations. You know what else is waste, fraud, and abuse is Donald Trump's tariffs and the upheaval it has caused. What is waste, fraud, and abuse is the rotting of U.S. aid produce that got wasted in warehouses because the U.S. aid program was shut down. Now, a few of those programs have been opened after much pressure, but there's no news whether the infectious disease, HIV programs are going to remain funded or not, because there would be big news about that. So, let's talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, because that's where the waste, fraud, and abuse is happening. The White House, according to MSNBC, will not release the list of 75 countries that have reached out on trade details. So, the tariffs, that's the waste, fraud, and abuse, that is the losing in the markets of so much money in 3 days that it's like losing, it's trillions of dollars. It's hard to quantify. Billions of dollars is hard to quantify for regular people like me. Trillions of dollars, even more so. This astronomical number. And now they're coming and, trying to kiss Donald Trump's ass, evidently, according to Donald Trump. Well, show us the receipts. Who is coming? Nothing there. I want to read you something from the Bulwark's JVL in their YouTube video that starts with the title "Tariff Harm is Irreversible." And JVL says, "We are no longer the safe harbor country. Other countries, our allies, won't put their investments and savings in American treasury bills anymore. They are now probably going to withdraw them out of the American markets and invest in Europe, invest in Japan, invest in Australia. Hell, invest in China if you want, but I wouldn't. Invest in India because that's a huge growing market. So, that's what we have chosen. This tariffs, this waste, fraud, and abuse. And JVL reminded us that the American people chose Donald Trump. So in a sense, we chose to inflict this on us. Or not all of us can say that individually, and some people have a problem when I say that as a unit, but as a unit, that's what happened. We couldn't keep our country, our systems in place. We couldn't hold an insurrectionist accountable for his crimes. And that insurrectionist is now acting very much like a dictator 3 months into his second term in office and his first reign. But there is hope here and there. There's news that was wind from the press that, Donald Trump will probably disregard until this case gets to the Supreme Court because he's shown this reckless disregard for following the rulings of lower courts and appealing quickly in emergency to the Supreme Court. So everything is going quickly up to the Supreme Court because Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about the lower courts. The Washington Post reported that a judge ordered the White House on Tuesday to lift a nearly 2-month-long set of access restrictions it placed on the Associated Press, while the news organization's lawsuit against 3 Trump administration officials plays out. So think about that. That we are in a place now that the press is pushing back and a judge has ordered. We know, I can tell you without a doubt that this is going to be appealed. And then the circuit court will do and affirm the judgment, but then the Supreme Court is probably going to do something that we don't know what it's going to do. Hopefully with the freedom of the press, they hold that up and force Donald Trump to put Associated Press back into the press pool. And while all this is happening, it's very, very telling that the GOP and the Republicans know exactly what is happening and the mess that they have created and the mess that Donald Trump is creating every single day, that they are refusing to meet with their constituents. We talked about protests at these town halls. It's not at the town halls anymore. Their constituents are coming to Washington and they won't talk to these constituents. There's news about unions that the Trump administration is attacking unions' right to collective bargaining. That wasn't part of his campaign. Is that why the head of the Teamsters gave him their endorsement? I mean, that kind of seems like counterproductive. Then there's news from NPR and Reuters. NPR saying the government says it will begin screening immigrant social media for activity that officials think indicates support for anti-Semitism. The U.S. government said it will begin screening, according to Reuters, the social media of immigrants and visa applicants for what it called anti-Semitic activity, leading to swift condemnation from rights advocates who raised free speech and surveillance concerns, because we are now entering the surveillance state. I mean, this is really happening. If the government can go and screen the social media of immigrants, they can go in and screen the social media of anybody, any of us, speaking the truth, and there is nothing to stop Donald Trump's DOJ from coming after the regular American, every single one of us. So beware the surveillance state because it is here. Now, right before I came on, there were a couple of recent developments which I'll just read out to you. Independent journalist Marissa Kabas wrote that Department of Doji will descend upon the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, buildings tomorrow. An agency source tells me. FDIC is responsible for insuring all commercial personal U.S. bank accounts for up to $250,000 and regulating banks. Scary in light of Trump's manipulation of markets this week, because that's exactly what he did with the tariffs. He manipulated the markets. There better be investigations into who benefited from this manipulation of the market. But what is FDIC? FDIC insures your money, if you're an individual or a small business, up to $250,000 in their banks. So if there's like some sort of a catastrophe and you have an X amount of money that gets stolen, or somehow that bank goes belly up to $250K, there's an insurance that every single account gets when they get a bank account in the United States. So that's big, big, big. Like, it affects every single bank account. It's going to allow this extra governmental doji apparatus of Elon Musk and Donald Trump to go into our bank accounts and how our bank accounts are doing, and start gutting the organization, the corporation that insures the bank accounts and regulates banking. Another latest news: Donald Trump signed his latest executive order against a prominent law firm, this time targeting Sussman Godfrey, which represents Dominion voting systems in defamation cases related to the 2020 U.S. election. I mean, talk about targeting people and firms. I hope that this firm stands strong, because they have stood strong with Dominion voting, and Dominion voting won $250 million. Was it a quarter? Yeah, I think it was $250 million, $787 million or something like that. For the what was it that? I think it was that. Don't quote me on the number. So Donald Trump is ramping up investigations and throwing these executive orders that are clearly unconstitutional and violative of the First Amendment and even the Sixth Amendment, because it gets in the way of right to counsel. And he is going after Christopher Krebs, who was in charge of election security, cybersecurity, and he said the elections were free and fair. So you can expect Donald Trump to go after everybody involved in the January 6th investigations, and all those who opposed his seditious conspiracy, all those in the DOJ, all those in Congress. He will make their lives difficult. He will make their lives difficult. But he thinks it's too difficult to give due process to people in El Salvador because they were wrongly sent there. He's going to use all his resources to investigate these enemies of the state as he sees, because they are his enemies, and put executive orders on against law firms that are defending democracy and the truth and justice. But he will not give the order and comply with a district court's order to bring those people back. or to answer questions about why those people were sent there even after the court had ordered them not to be sent there. And there's a good chance this case will come back to Judge Boasberg. But they are randomly placed, so when you file a new petition, it'll be in the District of Columbia, but it could be a different judge, or it could be Chief Judge Boasberg. We don't know. But every minute that these people are suffering and our government is just like, oh, okay, we wait. Supreme Court did like one of the worst things I've seen it do in a while, and it's done quite a few really abhorrent things in the last few years, was to just not even talk about the people who are actually there, in their opinion. So, you see this slippery slope we're going down. I want to keep you informed, and this episode has gone long. I want to keep you informed. And, please share. Please like if you like the material. And please comment if you have any questions or positions. If I see it to be in sync with the message that I'm sending with this information, if it adheres to the truth of the matter, then I'll pin up your comments on the videos. So, I enjoy thoughtful comments, and I appreciate them very much. So, take care, everybody.